So why'd you vote for Donald Trump?
I voted for Donald Trump because I feel like he was kind of getting rid of some of the ideologies that I was brought up on that I didn't necessarily agree with, as well as I do think that he has a better long-term plan for the United States.
He's a better long-term plan. So what makes you think he has a better long-term plan?
I think he has a better long-term plan because I think DOGE was a great first step that he took, and as well as I do think that his first presidency was able to show us, what he was capable of as far as like economics wise.
Okay, so you said Doge was better. So you think that like you want there to be less government waste and spending, right?
I do agree. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, so then why did you vote for Donald Trump, given that the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget indicated that he would sign off on 4 trillion more debt-related spending over the next 10 years comparative to Harris's plans?
I actually didn't know about that. But would you mind telling me more about that?
Yeah, again, Harris's plans specifically would lead to 4 trillion less debt-related spending, according to the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, because Donald Trump wants
Yeah.
to do massive tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires that Kamala Harris wasn't advocating for.
I personally don't know. I didn't know that. But I would say that for more in support of my point, based upon what we saw in the Biden-Harris um, presidency, would you guys say that they were going to have a more positive outcome than Trump would have if
Yes,
they?
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Can I ask you a quick question, man?
Yeah, sure.
Who do you think had better economic policy, Harris or Trump?
I do think Trump had better
Okay,
economic policies.
okay.
I do think,
I have a second.
however,
I have a second question for you.
okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, so we know that Donald Trump's economic policy has intentionally crashed the stock market and barreled America
Yeah,
towards a recession. He even
yeah.
admitted it. Can you name any economic policy that Kamala Harris ran on that would have intentionally crashed the stock market and barreled America towards a recession?
I personally don't think that she could have came up with a policy if she wanted to, but she did. I don't think that she personally did
What?
anything
Wait,
So
can you?
I
for.
You think she has zero policies?
No, I do
does
think
she
that
couldn't
she
come up
had
with a policy
policies,
to
but
intentionally crash the stock market and barrel America towards a
Oh,
recession? So
you
here's my
can't.
question. Why would you say that the economic policy of the guy that that is intentionally crashed the stock market and barreled America
yeah.
towards a recession is better than the policy of Kamala Harris, who wouldn't have done that? I mean, like, this seriously raises a question because
Hmm.
you're essentially saying that crashing the stock market and sending America into a recession is better than not crashing the stock market and not sending America into a recession, which just sounds absolutely backwards and crazy to me.
I don't think that it's backwards and crazy because I do believe that he was able to basically say what he was running on and that he was trying to make a better United States within the next 10 years. And so I do think that we do have some growing pains that are going to happen. Obviously, we no one knows what's going to happen for the next 4 years, but I do think that um, his starting, especially with Doge and declaring.
I just want to point out he muted himself because he went on pause. It looks like
We
he
were
maybe got
making
a
the point that
call.
the long term plan wasn't. If you were saying government waste and spending is leading to like more negative conditions for American workers and consumers, well, then you would acknowledge that Donald Trump's greater level of debt related spending would cause a greater likelihood of that happening. Secondly, it's not a response to saying anything that Kamala Harris is advocating for that was worse than what Donald Trump has clearly caused in terms of an intentional crash of the stock market and the broader markets of our economy, which has
And then also
been
just
shown by the Atlanta Fed to literally likely going to lead to a recession.
I also just want to say that it's crazy to call hundreds of thousands of Americans having their 401k and their retirement plans cut in fucking half just growing pains. You know what I mean? Like, there's serious real world implications from what Donald Trump is doing. And it's
Mhm.
incredibly detrimental and harmful to millions of Americans. I don't think that you could defend that as a growing pain, but also, you were merely assuming that his economic policy will lead to long term good. I don't think that you would ever be able to tell us why.
I would rebut that point by saying I think that the way that we can kind of trust Donald Trump is because of his past business.
He bankrupted six of them. I guess this will be a seventh, right?
That is true that he did bankrupt a bunch of
Jeez.
companies, but I don't know if you know how many CEOs have not bankrupted a single
Name
company
one
on their
other
way to the top.
name other CEO or business owner that has bankrupted six businesses.
Well, I don't know sick businesses, but you could go Jeff Bezos has bankrupted companies. You can go Mark Zuckerberg. They've all had uh failed businesses.
You're equivocating between a claim here. Nobody's saying that rich people don't have bankruptcies. I think
Yeah,
the
yeah,
average millionaire has like 1.2, right?
yeah, yeah,
But my claim is that he has bankrupted an extraordinary amount of businesses. Six
yeah,
plus one of those businesses was a casino, which is
yeah.
incredibly hard to bankrupt. And then additionally, for you to say, well, I understand that his policy is destroying the economy now. I have no evidence that this will lead to any good in the long term, but I'm just going to say it will because he's a billionaire, is the largest fucking cope I've ever heard. This
Well,
brain rot is destroying our country. These sentiments of anti intellectualism were these same ones that led to a famine in the USSR because everybody praised baseless ideology with no evidence, fact, or reason to justify them and ignored common sense, fact, reason, and logic. And that is exactly what you're doing now. You're like, kill the economy, crash the stock market, send us into a recession.
I'm
But
not
none of
saying
this
all
matters,
that.
and they're growing pains towards a larger end goal because the guy that's doing it all is a billionaire. And for whatever reason, I guess that means I could justifiably assume it will lead to good outcomes
You're
in the
kind
long
of putting
term.
words in my mouth. Real quick though, Parker and Dean, I really respect what you guys are doing. In terms of, I do disagree with you guys, but I do think that we should have more respectful debate and not go for character while we're having debate because I
Nobody's
don't think
going
that.
for your character right now, man. I'm just
No, 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 no,
simply,
no. I'm not.
I,
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I have noticed before that you guys have.
But yeah, I don't know why they just randomly said that. I feel like we've been incredibly nice to people.
Yeah, dude, stop pivoting, man. Like, I understand
No,
that.
sorry.
Like,
Yep.
I'm not being disrespectful towards you. I've not insulted you
I'm
once.
not saying that
Okay.
either. I would just. It was one of
Okay,
the things that I
so then
wanted to
it's
bring up.
yeah, but like please respond to the points that I brought up. Once again, the overwhelming point that I'd like you to respond to is
Okay.
that you're basically assuming that this is going to lead to a good outcome in the long term with no reason, even though it's destroying the economy now. This is not just a cope, but a very harmful cope that is actively destroying the livelihoods of millions of Americans and barreling America towards its next recession, which will distribute even more wealth from the poor to the rich, furthering the exploitation of the working class. Okay?
Okay.
And
So.
I think that you still saying the long-term outcome is going to be good with no reason is it categorically falls under the same ideology that intellectual ideologies of the USSR did that ultimately led to a famine that killed millions of people.
So I would like to challenge you. Do you think that the stock market is technically ruining lives? Because most of the people that own stocks are the upper class, and most people on the left do like to
It's
say
not just the
that.
stock market. It's also like the GDP. It's going to be unemployment.
But who did the GDP mostly affect?
Also, you're wrong. So
Disproportionately lower income people.
It doesn't affect the top 1%.
It's gonna. So when you're talking about like tariffs, right? When you're talking about the effect
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like on people's retirement, you're talking about the effect on
Hmm.
general average American citizens. The people's
Yep.
jobs who get cut the first are going to be low income individuals, right? People who are rich are going to uh, have like especially if they have businesses, they have expenses, right?
also you're completely
They're going to cut those
bypassing
expenses.
401ks that are held by over 50% of American workers. Okay,
All right,
I
401k
think it needs
getting
to be
cut.
clear that the claim that a disproportionate amount of individuals who invest in the stock market are the ultra wealthy, that's not true. It's the disproportionate amount of the money that is invested in the stock market comes from the ultra wealthy. But there is millions of American citizens, just like you and I, that have retirement accounts and 401ks and pensions tied up in American stock markets. And once again, I want to make it clear you are
Hmm.
literally now arguing that you don't care about destruction of the American economy and a recession in the American GDP and crashes in the stock market by saying
No.
that, well, most people who are in it are rich. This is so crazy to me. It is just the ultimate cope, the ultimate lie. You have been conned, and it is hurting many other Americans. Hop off of this dogmatic, tribalistic perspective that you hold so close to heart that Donald Trump is good for our country, and just recognize that maybe people who are calling for intentional crashes in the stock market and a recession for
I'm
our
not calling
country
for that.
are wrong.
You just put a bunch of words in my mouth
I
that
said not
I wouldn't
calling,
even.
defending.
Okay. The reason why I would say that I would defend it though is because he did have a successful first term in terms of raising the GDP, raising stock market. Obviously, we
No, he
saw,
didn't.
Wait,
yeah, we saw a big inflation.
can you name one policy that Donald Trump influenced to get passed that was beneficial in a large extent to the GDP?
Oh, wait, repeat that. Sorry.
Name one policy that Donald Trump influenced to get passed that was beneficial in a large extent to the GDP.
I think that the portion of undocumented immigrants that he had in 2016 led to a higher growth for the lower class
In
because it
20,
was able to,
you said in 2016.
or sorry, 2017,
Okay, so in
when
tw-
his presidency that I was talking about.
so to clarify, um, I'm asked you for a policy. Could you provide a policy?
But a direct policy? um, no, I'm just referring to the general deportation that he had of
Deportations negatively impact the GDP. Can you give me any
how?
evidence that deportations positively impact GDP?
Yeah, because when you have a
No,
bunch of
seriously, give
deportations,
me. Do you want to put money on this?
I don't want to bet with you, no.
Okay, well, because you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because
By the way,
you unequivocally are wrong.
this should just be like self-evident, man. Undocumented migrants pay $100 billion per year in taxes. They're productive providers in the economy. If you're making money and paying taxes, that means that you're spending money too. Obviously, if we remove people that spend money from the economy, GDP growth will slow. That's common sense. I mean, like you could argue that it's not a bad thing, and like we'll happily like debunk that argument, but you definitely can't argue that it's not happening.
So what's your claim?
That you could try to argue that it's not a bad thing that deporting all undocumented migrants would slow GDP growth, and like we'll respond and debunk that position. But you can't
Yeah.
argue that it doesn't slow GDP growth because that's just common sense. They pay $100 billion per year in taxes. They're making money, paying taxes, spending it to in the economy. It's very obvious that if we were to deport millions of documented migrants that are productive providers,
Not
GDP
documented,
growth
undocumented.
slows. That's what I just said.
I,
Undocumented
I'm,
migrants. That's what I just
I'm
said.
yeah, but I don't think that anyone has a problem with people that are coming in
Whoa,
and
whoa, whoa, whoa. You're pivoting. Admit that you were wrong about undocumented migrants not increasing GDP growth. Admit that you
okay,
were wrong by saying that.
I'll admit referring to GDP that I was wrong on that
There you
point.
go. There you go.
Um, But I would like to say that I do think that when we go and I personally live in San Diego, and so I saw a lot of the effects that it was having, especially on some of my black friends, where they weren't getting some of the welfare, some of the government assistance that they should have been getting in school when there were a bunch of immigrants coming in to the country, and I think taking some of those.
You're wrong.
What?
There's not a single federal program that undocumented migrants benefit from.
Oh God, Jesus Christ. Okay,
Um,
I just want to let you know, immigrants provide more to the economy than they take from it. So no one's losing on social programs because of that. Also, if you're going to
Yeah.
say that social programs disproportionately impact people of color, well then why do you support like the Republican politicians that actively advocate against those social programs?
Because I don't think that most of them do advocate again. Could you give me an example of some of the social programs that, besides, because I think the
Donald
DEI is one of
Trump
the
literally
Department of Education, right? We can talk about Medicare. We can talk about
food
Medicaid, Social
yes.
stamps.
Security, food
Food
stamps,
stamps.
free lunch for students. We can talk about anything. Do you want
Yeah, so answer and respond to what Parker just said, and then tell me what social benefits benefit undocumented migrants.
So some of the ones that
No,
I
no,
would
no.
definitely
Respond to Parker first.
I am. I'm
Okay.
referring. I saw some of the housing that went up, especially as more undocumented migrants came into the country, and that
wrong?
was the main thing I was.
Wrong.
Wrong.
Because
Wrong.
You're telling me
Undocumented.
that
because
I can.
undocumented immigrants increase the labor force, which then creates a more productive economy, which leads to lower prices for particular goods that are produced in the United States, right? I.e., right, going to be houses because there's going to be a greater supply of houses built.
Also, I just want to put it out. What
what
percentage of undocumented migrants would you guess buy houses?
the buy houses. I'm not sure about that, but I'm referring to rent in specific because they were basically priced out because a bunch of immigrants were getting government government money that some of my
They
friends.
don't.
Asylum
They don't.
seekers,
They don't.
wait, legal asylum seekers were getting state policies. You don't disagree with legal immigrants getting social policies, do you?
Legal immigrants, but I would disagree with
Yeah. Okay.
asylum
Wait.
seekers.
Asylum seekers are legal immigrants.
I disagree with that because I think
What?
the
What?
asylum seeker.
Wait, you're just
Dude,
objectively wrong. Wait. You're
No, no, no,
objectively
no.
wrong. No.
I'm not saying legally.
No. Stop. You're objectively wrong. Asylum seeking is a
God.
legal, documented way of entry into America. Stop lying, okay? If you
No,
are an
I'm not
asylum
lying.
seeker,
You are.
documented and you have court dates for your processing, and you're legally allowed to stay in America and have access to social benefits while you need it, okay? Undocumented migrants are not asylum seekers, and asylum seekers are not undocumented migrants. So tell me what social benefits give undocumented migrants money.
From the government checks that I saw some
From
of
what
the
program?
people.
From what program?
I'm not sure
Because
exactly
it
what
doesn't
program.
exist.
It does exist because
No,
I
it
saw it
doesn't.
with
Give
my
me
own two
evidence.
eyes.
Give me evidence. Give me evidence. Please give me a source right now. It does not exist. The only federal benefits that undocumented migrants receive is access to emergency resources in hospitals per humanitarian act passed under passed under Obama and Biden in 2015. Okay, that is the only federal benefit that undocumented migrants receive anywhere, at any point, at any time. They do not qualify for any other services. Medicare, nope. Medicaid, nope. Food stamps, nope. EBT, nope. Social Security, nope. You have to be documented in order to have access to those benefits. Undocumented migrants do not qualify for any of them. You will never be able to find a source anywhere on the internet that says anything different.
Can you give me like the main reason why you voted Donald Trump? Is that possible?
The main reason I voted for Donald Trump, honestly, was because of some of the corruption that I saw within the Democratic Party. One of my uncles was actually campaigning for Democrat over in San Francisco, and I kind of saw the corruption and the just the general malpractice that was going on within the Democratic Party. So that was one of the main reasons.
Malpractice? Can you give me an example?
Like for example, some of the DOGE spendings. The other thing with
Can you give me
DEI.
what part of the Doge spending? Like what specifically did Doge identify as waste spending that you think is bad that Democrats were pushing for?
I definitely think some of the ideology. As
Ideology
far
is not spinning.
I know I'm getting there. I'm saying like trans ideology in foreign country.
Wait, so
That's the main one that
wait
I
to
saw.
clarify. Do you think that they were like making mice trans?
No, I don't. I think that was an exaggeration, but I
An
do think that
exaggeration? Just call it a lie.
I did think it was an exaggeration because it was a
Just call it a
documented
lie.
study. It wasn't a lie though. It was a documented study that went on that I don't think should have gone on, but
What do you mean they're doing transgender operations on mice? What does that even mean?
well, I don't know. They found it, so it's obviously
Doge lies all the
Mice
time.
can't be trans.
what evidence you guys have that DOGE is an untrustworthy source and has already lied?
Great question, and I can answer.
Yeah.
The New York Times spent months investigating their reported quote unquote cuts as seen on Doge.gov, and they found that their top 10 contracts on their website, their biggest contracts that they supposedly cut, were all wrong and they were all falsely reporting lies. Okay, now I understand if you want to sit here and say, well, the New York Times is a biased organization and it's possible that they didn't have any evidence for their claims. Well, guess what? After the New York Times made this reporting and debunked the 10 top contracts on Doge's website, do you know what Doge did?
I'm not sure. No.
They took the the top 10 contracts off their website. They removed any and all contracts off of their website that the New York Times reported as being false. All right. And the New York Times has continued to report more and more of their contracts as being false since then. And they've continued to take more and more of those contracts down. And then also about Social Security benefits going to like incredibly old people, like 200 years old. The director of Social Security came out and told America that that wasn't happening. Okay, man? So it's bad. It is really bad. They are the furthest thing away from ever being trustworthy.
So basically, you were saying though that because a couple of the things have been removed from the Doge website, that makes them untrustworthy.
Plenty of the things were wrong.
Yeah,
Callie, thank you so much
what
for
makes them
$15.
untrustworthy is that they reported false information. My evidence that they reported a shit ton of false information was because they got called out for it, then like swept it under the rug.
Yeah, I haven't researched that personally, but even if I do grant that, did you guys trust the last government with your money and would say that they were going in a positive direction with as far as
Yes.
taxes?
Yes.
You
Wait,
do?
wait. And far as taxes? Oh,
I
I
Yeah,
mean,
as far as lowering
is it
taxes
is in
and
in a positive direction in an ideological sense insofar as a comparative analysis between Kamala Harris's proposed tax plan and Donald Trump's? Absolutely night and day.
Also, yeah, the Biden
what
Harris
would evidence
administration,
be for that?
I would definitely take over the Trump administration any day of the week. What evidence do we have? The Chips and
Yeah.
Science Act, the PACT Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the American Rescue Plan.
So you're saying that all of those were actually working and having positive impacts on taxes because
On
well,
taxes? Wait, on
Wait,
on
wait. Are you saying that
taxes?
taxes were bad under the Biden Harris administration?
I would say yes, yeah.
You know whose plan of taxes that was?
For which plan?
Wait, wait, wait.
It was
Would you ever
Donald. It was
vote?
Donald Trump's tax plan. I'm sorry, I have to clarify. It was Donald Trump's tax plan, and you said it was a bad tax plan. So blame Donald Trump.
How is it Donald Trump's tax plan if
The
it
Tax Cuts and
with
Jobs
it?
Act was in effect well throughout 2025.
Parker, you're wrong.
Well,
It
to
actually
2025.
no, you're wrong, Parker. It expired in 2020. Not my name. You're actually right on this point, Parker. We just concede real quick. Admit that you're wrong. I'm not even joking.
So
See, unlike
wrong.
unlike a lot of Republicans, not my name. I like to call out people that follow my side of the aisle when they're spewing incorrect information. So what he's saying is incorrect. It is the case. When Biden and Harris assumed office, they actually changed the tax code through the American Rescue Plan. A lot of people will say that it was Donald Trump's tax cuts extended until 2025, but that's just straight up a lie. It's propaganda. And I'm not even kidding. I do disagree with the Democratic Party sometimes. But I guess my question to you would be, would you ever vote for the Biden-Harris tax plan again?
I would not know.
Okay, well, I just gaslit you. Parker was right. You just told us that you never vote for Donald Trump's tax plan again.
I didn't vote specifically for Donald Trump's tax plan. And
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Make sure to check out some of the other videos that I posted on my channel. Plus, you can watch my daily live streams where I debate people every single day on this YouTube channel. Just make sure to subscribe and like the video if you have not already. And have a fantastic day, everyone.